going, everybody? We welcome you to episode 91. We're counting down to 100 here. We're getting close on Hawai'i Football Now. Jordan Helly, Hunter Hughes back with you, as always, for the 91st straight week. We're looking forward to episode 100. It's a lot closer than I think I realize.
Jordan, we haven't missed a week.
We haven't missed a week yet. Knock on wood. We're going for 100. Knock on wood.
Crazy.
And we're getting closer to the goal. Hopefully we're in good health until then, and hopefully they don't cancel us before then. So far so good. We record this Wednesday morning at about 6:45 a.m. Wednesday, May 24th, set to release this our usual time on Thursday, May 25th. That'll be tomorrow. Big thanks to Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union as well. All right, it's official. Craig Angelos has been named the next AD at the University of Hawaii. We will spend the bulk of today's episode kind of talking about that. We talked a bit about him last week, but we'll kind of get into the machinations of how we ended up with Angelos as the next AD and what we can look forward to once he takes over basically in a week and a half, June 5th. He will start on the job. That'll be the Monday after David Matlin's last day on Friday, June 2nd. But a quick opening drive here. And before we get to the football, I know Hunter was locked in the PGA Championship this weekend.
Yeah.
Hunter, I just wanted to get your thoughts on my guy Michael Block, and if you were motivated at all to become like a PGA professional in one day, also finish in the top 15 of a major. What a story.
Unreal. For those that are like, what's the deal with this, old guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't really understand. This is a big deal. My brother is a PGA professional, teaches out of Forest Ridge Golf Course in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And basically the difference between a golf pro and a pro golfer is you give golf lessons, you work golf course, you work in the industry, you help people get better at the game, and you're basically committing your life to the game of golf. And the PGA Championship is sponsored by the PGA of America. So they have a qualifying tournament every year for PGA professionals out there, just like my brother, this guy, Michael Block. This guy, he qualified, played well enough to get into the tournament, and then shites out, placed in the top 15, which also qualified him for next year. But that's only the tip of the iceberg for the week that this guy had. I mean, he went out, played with Rory in the final round. It was an extremely difficult golf course at Oak Hill up in New York, and golfers were throwing their clubs, complaining about the conditions, and this guy was just steady Eddie through the whole deal. I mean, Jordan, the rough was like 6 inches high. The dude finished it, I believe he finished it even par, which is an amazing feat, but then wound up making a hole in one in the final round as well. And so it's really just a story of a normal dude going up against the best in the world. And man, it you can't help but feel a little bit of like hope and generate some inspiration from a guy like this. I mean, it's quite a story.
It really is, and I think gives the ordinary guys a bit of hope. Pretty cool throughout the weekend, and I didn't realize your brother was a pro. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
the golf game, man, in the Hughes family, through and through.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know I was locked into that over the weekend. That was a lot of fun. And speaking a lot of fun on the golf course, you got to imagine that our guy Angelos got to get the clubs over because he's going to have to play some golf and start fundraising, man. Get to the fundraising, get to building those relationships. We'll talk a little bit about that once we get into the game time. But before then, we got to remind you that Hawai'i Football Now is brought to you by Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. As Hawaii's largest credit union, they are committed to serving individuals and businesses through its 14 branch locations statewide and convenient digital banking services. As a leader in providing support for the islands, Hawaii USA is committed to strengthening Hawaii's financial wellness and sharing successes with members, local businesses, and the greater community. Visit HawaiiUSAFCU.com. All right, game time here on episode 91. As we mentioned, 'tis official. Craig Angelos will be the next athletics director at the University of Hawaii. This following approval by the Board of Regents by an 8-2 vote last week, Thursday. If you were with us during episode 90, we talked at length about him, and we're still awaiting the Board of Regents meeting. And we're ready to go in case anything weird happened. Thankfully, nothing did. And so kind of as we expected, again, it was an 8-2 vote with one abstention amongst the 11 board members there at last week, Thursday's meeting. We didn't really get any official word on other applicants throughout the process. We outlined the process a little bit last week. Basically, 5 to 8 names were forwarded on from the selection committee on to David Lassner, the president, who then forwarded on about 3 to 5 names to the board, forwarded it on to David Lassner, about 3 to 5 names, of which he chose the one, and was able to recommend Craig Angelos for that position. And so Mr. Angelos comes in, was ready to go. Press conference last week, Thursday, as well. I think he said a lot of the right things. I think things that people wanted to hear for those who were obviously interested in a guy coming in from the outside with no real tangible ties to the University of Hawaii, outside of maybe a few baseball games that he played here when he was a starter on the BYU baseball team. And I thought he had a nice, funny little quip about that in his press conference, not realizing some of the stats that he put up, but had been dug up maybe by some in the local media. And so he kind of, put a little bit of an outline. Obviously, it's a lot of general speak at this point, which I don't think is unexpected because he's still got to get on the ground, kind of get his hands into the mud, if you will, and figure exactly how he wants to take this program forward. But he spoke a lot about, where Hawaii sits kind of in the pecking order of college athletics, talked a lot about the necessary things needed to be successful, whether that's fundraising, whether that's navigating the portal and NIL, whether that's facilities, coaching, retainment, and recruitment, kind of all of the above, the big check marks, some of the things we talked about last week. But what have been your impressions so far, Hunter, of AD in waiting, Craig Angelos, via some of the stories out there, his press conference? He's given a couple of other interviews as well.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen, Jordan, was on College Game Day a few years ago when a fan held up a sign that said Tim Tebow hit 132 in AA. They will expose you. If
game day signs are the best.
Oh man, if you're a public figure, which this guy obviously is, and your stats are out there, they will find them. So I love the fact that they dug up his college batting average from BYU and asked him about it. That's too much fun for me. Getting back to it, he at least did what he was supposed to do in my mind. He came right out and answered the looming question in I think a lot of people's mind, which was, hey, you're not from here. Are you going to be able to understand kind of what we go through out here, the changing landscape that Hawaii sports is continuing to be on for the foreseeable future? And he kind of just put those questions away with saying, hey, I'm not from here. Can't pretend like I'm from here, but one thing I do have is a posture to learn, a posture to get to know people, and I want to fully integrate me and my family, and we want to make this place our home. Which, Jordan, that's what you want to hear from anybody. I think we on the media side, maybe fans of Hawaii football can be a little bit quick to judge somebody, especially after everything that went down with the Todd Graham era. But not everybody from the mainland is like that. I'd like to throw my name in there. I'm from the mainland, and as long as you come forward with a humble heart and one that's wanting to learn and grow, and adapt and be a part of this community. Everybody that I talk to that has deep Hawaii ties says that's what makes you local. So to me, that was everything. That was everything that I wanted to hear, to kind of settle that down in my mind on what's this BYU boy coming in here and going to take over our program? Is he the right fit for this job? Well, he at least sounded humble. The other thing I took from that interview was kind of his honesty and his rawness. Previous athletic directors, they just seemed so regimented and polished in their answering of questions, and there wasn't always a humanity that I could feel from them, even in some very difficult situations. Thinking back to the Todd Graham fiasco, upper management at University of Hawaii seemed very calculated and rehearsed, and didn't always feel like they saw or understood kind of what was going on from a just an emotional standpoint. So that all coming from Craig Angelos and his sparkling resume as an athletic director, I'm kind of excited to see what can happen here.
Yeah, you don't all of us, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so you gotta be willing to learn. You gotta be willing to kind of understand and be self-reflective enough to know what you don't know, right? And I think he's talked a bit about that and learning and coming in. And there was a really good Q&A put together by our good friend Brian McKinnis over at Spectrum News. You can go check that out on their platforms. And we'll pull a little bit from that as well. In talking about just finding his way through, acclimating a little bit and learning, and obviously taking some of the experiences that he's had at different stops. I thought a really good question from Brian to him. He's been at a number of places, like 7 different spots where he's been at least the number 2 guy. And asked him, are any of those stops kind of similar to Hawaii? And he said, honestly, not really, because of Hawaii's kind of unique makeup. Part of it also being its prominence within the Hawaii market. It's the biggest show in town, right? And he compared it even to the University of Miami when he was there, and saying, like, even when he was there, they weren't necessarily the top dog in town when you're talking about Florida State, all the alums that they have, even when you juxtapose that with the professional scene, right? But in Hawaii, like, it's front and center, no doubt about it. And that was kind of interesting. And then kind of to your point, coming in, learning. Interestingly, he talked about he's not bringing anybody with him. He's not bringing any support staff with him. He's not bringing folks from his previous stop, whether it be Long Island or prior stops. In addition, he plans on keeping everybody in place at the University of Hawaii, associate ADs, support staff. He plans on using the built-in personnel infrastructure already there. And I thought that was kind of interesting, right? Because I think as a person coming from the outside, it might be a little more comfortable coming in. He said, you can, there are 3 approaches, is what he told Brian. And that was, come in, clean house, bring all your guys in, come in, don't clean house, but maybe bring in like a deputy to oversee the existing staff, or you just come by yourself and trust the folks that work there. And he said, they've done a good job, and he's confident that they'll be able to help him along in the same way that they helped David Matlin along. And I thought that was kind of an interesting approach, right? And a bit of a humble approach. And you got to kind of put yourself out there, right? If you're going to walk into some place where everybody's already there, and you're the new guy, very much the new guy, and you're kind of on your own in that sense. Not saying that he will be out on an island or anything like that, because I think there are very, very many capable people working within that building and within those offices. But I thought that was kind of an interesting approach for him, and trying to go about this by him fitting in, as opposed to, maybe the other way around, and trying to mold the place you're going to fit you. At least that's the appearance that I get. Yeah,
and I think that fits with this situation. Matlin isn't being fired; he's retiring. And outside of a couple of decisions these last few years, it's been pretty much smooth sailing a few national championships with our volleyball team, some conference championships from women's basketball. Wahine volleyball continues to do their thing. We just hired a new baseball coach. It seems that the football fiasco has kind of been righted, at least for the time being. So it seems, put facilities and the whole ongoing situation with the new Aloha Stadium, put that all on the side. It's kind of smooth sailing right now. I don't know if it's necessary to quite come in and clean house. So, not only I'm not sure if we have the budget to come in and completely clean house.
Good point.
You know what I mean? But also I just don't see that that's necessary. So I completely agree, at least with him on that decision right now, to come in, learn, get to know. Because man, University of Hawaii administration, there's people that have been there a long time. So I'm sure he's gonna have the ability to learn from a bunch of people. And the one thing, Jordan, I'd love to get your insight on is I would have loved to see who some of the other finalists were, and if those finalists were from in-house, because that was kind of the mysterious part of how they conducted this whole thing. Was they didn't let us know. They didn't tell us not only who was recommended to Lassner and then Lassner to the Board of Regents. Not only did we not know who, we also didn't know how many. So the kind of shrouded in mystery part of this was a little confusing for me, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I misspoke a little bit earlier on the process, but it was basically, the search committee took in all the applications, apparently reportedly over 60 applications, this according to the University of Hawaii. 8 to 10 of those applicants were brought in for interviews with the search committee, search advisory committee. And then of those 8 to 10, 3 to 5 were forwarded on to David Lassner. And then, of course, the one, ultimately, Craig Angelos, was then passed on to the Board of Regents, recommended for approval. Ultimately, he was. And it's kind of interesting. I think what you've heard from a lot of people is a little bit of surprise that it was somebody from Craig Angelos's ilk, right, outside. I don't know if anybody was necessarily upset about that, or at least not a ton of people, just because of his makeup. I think a lot of the frustration had to do with the process, in a lot of ways, right? And that's not Craig Angelos's fault. I want to be very clear on that. Like, he didn't come up with the process; he just applied, right, and ultimately made it to the end of the road. And so I think that's where have been a lot of the frustration. In fact, I think, you've heard from folks that have voiced frustration with the process in the same breath, say, hey, look, but we're also supportive of Angelos moving forward. Like that's those are two different conversations, I think. And for the most part, it's been, I think, majority of folks are willing to give this guy a chance and willing to give Craig Angelos, the support that he will need to give him the best opportunity to move forward. But yeah, Dave Reardon had an article in the Star Advertiser, I think it was today, maybe yesterday, read it online, but talking about, there are certain privacy issues and things of that nature. And apparently, on top of the legal constraints, they didn't want to necessarily reveal the names of some of the other finalists because they obviously, a lot of these people have current jobs and they didn't want to, have them in an awkward position of their employers asking them why you're applying for other jobs and stuff like that, which I kind of get. But then he also brought up, this is according to Dave Reardon, I'm not familiar with the process at all, but apparently the last time the head of the nursing school was up, or the head nursing school position was up, they brought like all 4 of the finalists to campus, had them go through interviews and things like that. And so apparently the 4 finalists were known in that situation. And I get it, it's not apples to apples, but it's still a stated position. It's still a government employment position. And so I would have liked to see that take place. And I get that this process is different than any other AD hiring process because of the restructuring of the administrative makeup of the University of Hawaii. right? Where there used to be a chancellor that kind of handled things and then forwarded that on to the president, who made the decision, and then it was just the Board of Regents approving salary or not. Whereas now that the chancellor's kind of been eliminated, and now the president gets it from a search advisory, and the search advisory committee was their own doing, right? That was sort of their prerogative. That's not necessarily built in to the written structure of things. But I would have liked to see an opportunity for, the 3 to 5 finalists to be brought before the Board of Regents and kind of go through a little Q&A. That would have, and I get it, that's not how these things always work, and that's maybe an ideal world, but I think a lot of people would have appreciated that, right? And I don't know, maybe that discourages applicants from applying, right? Because are you going to want to go in front of a board, answer questions, put yourself out there, make it known to the world that you maybe want to leave your current job with no guarantee that you're going to be selected, right? But it would have been kind of nice to know, and it would have been kind of nice to see, again, I think Craig Angelos has answered a lot of the questions well. I think he's done a really nice job of answering those questions. But for those on the outside, that came after he got the position, right? And again, this has nothing to do with him individually. It's kind of just the process.
Yeah.
And so I would have liked to see it. Would have been nice to know exactly who was there kind of at the end, and having those folks maybe go before the Board of Regents or whatever it is, something along those lines, right? But that I think has been and even in talking to people, you've seen it on social media and whatnot, but even just talking to people in passing, I think that was one of the main concerns, was just how the process kind of played out, and maybe it'll be different the next time around.
Yeah. My thing was, okay, I get that you're wanting to protect people from their current jobs or whatever. If you're an employer and you get upset with an employee for applying for the athletic director position, find something else to get upset about. Honestly, I mean, that's like a dream job right there. That doesn't keep them from continuing to do their current job. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a cop out to me, Jordan, whenever they said that. Although it's a state job, so there's certain state requirements that they have to kind of fall suit with, and all of that. So that's one thing. The other thing that came out, Jordan, was one of the Board of Regents didn't even vote, didn't even cast a vote. That to me is unacceptable. Whenever that came out, I'm like, are you just there for the free lunch? I mean, come on. You're one of the last voices to let your kind of decision be made here, and whether it's one way or another, to not even vote is, to me, kind of disrespectful of the process. With this process, that's kind of unique in the fact that it goes from a very democratic structure in the search committee. They come up with a few recommendations to David Lassner. He picks one from that final list. Then it goes to another democratic process with the Board of Regents, and then they ultimately vote and make a decision. For someone on that final leg of the decision-making process to not even vote, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a big fan of just hanging out and not if you're a decision maker, be a decision maker. So to me, that part was a little bit frustrating. Again, nothing about Craig Angelos, but of the process, that maybe if we come around to this in the next 10 years or so, we rethink how we do some of this.
Yeah, and I guess I could say that in an ideal world, things have gone swimmingly, and Craig Angelos is the athletics director for a number of years, and they won't have to go through this process anytime soon. But at some point it'll happen, right? And odds are maybe David Lassner's not the president at that point. He's enjoying retirement, and so this is always an ongoing process. I think whether it was how the position description was written, how the process played out as well, I think there's room for improvement and room to kind of go even more outside the box. You could argue that Craig Angelos is a little bit outside the box as somebody who, doesn't necessarily have a tie to the program. One of the questions that Brian McInnes asked him was his philosophy for football scheduling. And I just kind of wanted to read the direct quote from the Spectrum News article here because it's a bit of a paragraph, but I think from a Hawai'i Football Now standpoint, obviously we're most interested in how this affects the football program going forward, while fully acknowledging a lot of those things are interconnected with the football and football program and the rest of the athletics department. But he said, quote, this is Craig Angelos' response. You want to do home and homes with Power 5 if you can, because that really helps draw the crowd at home. You may have to do a guaranteed game to get money, but you also need wins. You need to hit your 6, or in UH's case, 7 wins. The key, I think, for the success and perception of the program is to be bowl eligible every year. You want to be competitive in your conference and then try to schedule your non-conference games accordingly. If things go according to plan, you want to be at least 3-2 and not 3-2 in your non-conference. Then you go 500 in your conference games. You'll be at 7-6. That's a pretty good place to be in the baseline every year. And I think that's a pretty pragmatic approach. That was the end of the quote there. I think that's a pretty pragmatic approach. I think that's kind of what we've seen for the most part, over recent years, where you've got a couple of the marquee games on the schedule, right? This year, obviously, it's a trip to SEC country. You've got the Oregon game as well, but then you've also got some winnable non-conference games in there, whether they're FCS opponents, whether they're New Mexico State, even though New Mexico State I think is no longer a guaranteed win on the schedule. Jerry Keel's doing a great job there, as we saw last year. The Aggies are
by them.
They're on the rise. But I think a lot of sense, and I do think, look, the baseline, you want to be fighting for bowl eligibility every year. You've got to bring in some of the big power conferences. It's getting harder and harder to do it with the way that things are going. And so getting home games from some of those schools becomes harder and harder. Right, often it's home and home, kind of, right? If you get a Power 5 team to come play here, it's rarely just a 1-for-1. It's like, all right, we'll play one game in Hawaii, but you got to come play like 2 or 3 games in our home stadium, right? It's getting increasingly harder to do it. It does provide a financial windfall. We get that. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. And I think, it's like he could easily come in there and say, hey, look, we're going to go out there. We're going to schedule the best in the country. We want to be competing. We want to be top 25 program every single year. Well, that's a great goal to get to. That's where we would love to be, right? Competing for conference championships, being in the top 25 conversation like we have been at different points throughout the history of the program, not routinely by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a little more, I think, realistic when it comes to it. It's like, hey, look, 500 in conference, winning record in non-conference, that'll get you to bowl games. And that's a good place to be every year. And then kind of, have your baseline to build off of. I thought it was an interesting answer.
Yeah, I appreciate it when people look at it almost strategically, where if you break down different points of our schedule, that that you can kind of evaluate off of those metrics, because Hawaii always has that initial kind of far-fetched point of our schedule whenever we're playing the Michigans, we're playing the Vanderbilts, the Stanfords, where we need that from a strategic standpoint to earn some revenue whenever we go and play those schools from the Power 5. And then you've got those N1AAs or independent schools like the New Mexicos, and then we get into the heart of conference. And so I appreciate whenever someone in upper management or the administrative level kind of looks at it from that perspective. It shows that they're in touch. It shows that they get kind of what our schedule or what the certain challenges look like for us, and from there they can kind of make decisions with coaching and hiring accordingly. So to me, that's the kind of language that I like to hear from an AD, where, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's not just another bureaucrat coming in here who can, interview well and is good at holding all these different positions in the college athletics world. But this guy knows what he's talking about, and at least right now is focused on winning. So to me, that's really important as an alumni and a fan of UH.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And to be fair, a lot of the future schedule is, kind of set for him. A lot of those agreements and contracts being signed, right? Obviously, next several years are mostly filled out. We mentioned, Albany, Oregon this year. You got Stanford on the schedule as well with Albany. With Vandy and New Mexico State. Next year, 4 opponents already scheduled: Oregon, UCLA, at Sam Houston, Northern Iowa. Kind of following that, blueprint, if you will, as Sam Houston makes the jump up to FBS, and then 2025 Stanford, at Arizona, Sam Houston, and Portland State. So there are some FCS schools that are routinely in there. And then for 2026 on, only three games scheduled at max. So that's, I think, what we'll start to see some of the Craig Angelos effect starting to schedule from 2026 on. But obviously there's an opportunity to add a 5th non-conference game likely next season and the season after that as well, to get to the 5 non-conference plus the 8 conference games, as Hawaii has allotted those 13 games throughout the season. So we'll see, right? That'll be a big part of his task as an athletic director, is handling a lot of the scheduling for the football program, and hopefully can get a lot of people into the seats there at Ching. Speaking of Ching, we'll kind of get into a little bit of the updates there. Not a whole lot to report, but there is some visual progress being made down there on lower campus. So we'll take a quick break, come back with the second half after a little halftime pause. You're listening to episode 91 here on Hawai'i Football Now.
This is Hawai'i Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half time on Hawai'i Football Now, episode 91. Jordan and Hunter back with you. We got our guy Jonathan on the controls as well. All right, the Ching renovation's starting to take shape. Corner bleachers are coming in on the other side. They're building the
frame.
The frame. Yeah, I guess that's exactly what it is. I'm glad you knew what I was talking about. For the scoreboard.
Great
on the Diamond Head side.
By the way. That was
awesome.
Awesome.
I don't know when the actual scoreboard is making the drive down H1, but they'll be ready for it whenever that happens. If you think about the corner bleachers, you've probably seen some of the pictures posted on social media. Heck, Timmy and Sherry Chang social media have posted it themselves. Like some of the the bleachers are coming in. It's kind of very reminiscent of War Memorial here on Maui, for those that are familiar in how they kind of retrofitted that facility and used a lot of these metal bleachers to kind of round out things. And so I bring it up because there had been so much conceptual talk, right? And this is something that I think David Matlin has deserved a lot of credit for, in terms of getting the ball rolling on Ching, finding a way to make some lemonade out of the lack of stadium availability there at the old Aloha Stadium just a couple of seasons ago. And now it's different when you actually see like construction going on, right? When you see like cranes and tractors and bleachers being moved in, there's a different feeling than when they just talk about it. And I get it. The talking about it is necessitated or is necessary to get to this point. Not trying to criticize the administration or anything there. I think, again, this is something they deserve a lot of credit for, but it's a little different when you see, the ground being torn up a little bit, some bleachers being moved in. It's like, wow, this is actually happening. And I think is create a little buzz, a little excitement now that we head into summer, and obviously campus is a little more empty.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of par for the course here in Hawaii, where there's so much talk and little to show for it. That's just kind of the way it goes with any kind of big project. So it's definitely exciting. The unique thing here is, hey guys, we've got a we've got a time frame to work under. Like Stanford's coming here in just a couple of months. Let's get after it, boys. So to me, that though it's exciting, I'm like, oh my gosh, like are they gonna get all this done in time? Because um if road construction is any insight to what this project's going to look like, that there's a lot of standing around. So I hope that they get what they're supposed to get done in time. And again, Jordan, I can't help but wonder, this is my crazy hopeful brain as a former player. I would love if they put a section of bleachers kind of up in the crow's nest of the parking structure, like the top level where they have all of that field of solar going on up there. I would love just one row of, like, I don't know, 10 rows of seats up there where you could go, and it'd be a phenomenal view of the field from up there, and you could get away with a few hundred extra seats without creating too much. To me, that sounds like a walk in the park, but maybe that's why I'm not in charge.
Yeah, it's like the rooftops across the street of Wrigley.
That's
We can get
exactly
creative.
right.
We can get, why not get creative? Make it fun. I'm big on I'm like a sucker for taking spaces that aren't meant to be something and turning them into something else, whether they be rooftop bleachers. I like quirky elements like the green monster at Fenway, like different things like that. Like it's just I don't know. I'm a sucker for some of those kind of things. And so I'm on board. Sign me up. I'd go watch a game from up there. If you had that going, that'd be pretty darn cool. If they could get that going. And so obviously this ties a little bit into Craig Angelos, right? Because of the one of the big things that was listed on his resume, not necessarily by him, but by those following the story, is the fact that he got that stadium built at FAU. And obviously it was done for much cheaper than anything he can do here in Hawaii. It was done over a decade ago, and the financial climate is different. Materials costs, I'm going to imagine a bit more as things go. But he did kind of mention in some of his conversations with the media, it's like, hey, if it is going to be about 5 years, which is what they're telling us at this point, before we can get New Aloha Stadium going, he talked about building out Ching as best as they can. And so it sounds like he is very willing and open to kind of take that baton from David Matlin and continue to improve Ching beyond what we're just going to see and what is already in the works. Which I think at this point, like, you might as well, because 5 years might be optimistic. I'm just, we've talked about it at length and kind of until we've keeled over at times, both you and I think the general public at large. But so I'm encouraged by that. I think they might as well keep going, and I'm again excited to see what they can pull out of their hat to keep on adding to Ching and creating a better game day atmosphere down there.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting because it's an ongoing process. I think they are going to be forced to kind of keep the construction unfinished, because until we hit that necessary, I think it was median fan total of 15,000. That's Division I standard right there. So we've got some work to do to create an environment that is our standard attendance metric. So I think we're going to be seeing just little improvements to Ching probably as we are waiting for Aloha Stadium. It's probably going to be increased every single year. So it's definitely going to look different, but in some ways that's exciting and keeps us on our toes for sure, Jordan.
Friday, September 1st. That's when they play their first game there against Stanford. So TikTok as the clock goes, but there is some really good things happening down there. You can see it kind of taking shape, which is really cool. At at the Ching complex. And then of course this doesn't even include what they're going to do just across the street there for track and soccer as well, which I think obviously Hawai'i Football Now, but keen interest in the other programs. I think that'll be pretty darn exciting for those two programs as well, especially track, because they've been completely displaced by this whole endeavor going forward. All right, wrapping things up here, quick little 2-minute drill on the overtime to wrap things up. Jordan Murray making it through rookie minicamp with the Texans, signing as an undrafted free agent. Still long ways, obviously, from making it through all of the cuts leading up to the NFL season, but that is one box checked off, one check mark added to Jordan Murray, who continues on his football journey. That's a lot of guys, man, that rookie minicamp, that's it. Like that's the extent of their time in the league. And to make it beyond that, that's a good sign for sure.
The dream's still alive. Keep going, my man. I'm excited for him. And I'm pretty sure we talked about Jordan Murray with the Eagles, right, Jordan? Wasn't he at the Eagles rookie minicamp and then jumped over to the Texans? I thought he was with the Eagles.
Yeah, I'll double check on that. Yeah, and which happens, right? A lot of these guys, Eagles rookie minicamp, is what we had. So yeah, I think it's a good sign that he's been able to latch on with another program. It must have gone well enough with the Eagles that he's been desired elsewhere.
Yeah, the eye test was good enough to jump teams. So good for him.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be keeping an eye on a lot of these guys. The CFL season's not that far off, and we know we got a lot of guys north of the border getting ready for that season. We'll keep an eye on it going throughout. One other UH related note, not football specific, but Andre Iligan, the Farrington graduate tennis player, is having like the best season in UH tennis history. He has qualified for the round of 16 at the NCAA championships, the first guy to ever win a match in that tournament, or at least advance out of the round of 64 by making it to the Sweet 16. He has become an All-American, which is just incredible for like an undersized southpaw. And it's just good vibes for the University of Hawaii athletic program. He was supposed to start about 6 a.m. Hawaii time, which is now about an hour and a half ago. His match was delayed due to some earlier action. I think they're playing in Florida at like the USTA facilities. And at last check, this is about 7:30 in the morning Hawaii time. They're starting to warm up. So by the time you listen to this pod, we'll know whether or not he's on to the final 8, which is incredible. So kudos to Andre. What a career he's had, and capping it off in style. And just more proof, man, to local boys, whether it's football, whether it's tennis. It's not a bad place to be if you're going to stay home.
Also, he's not a big dude, Jordan. Normally tennis has kind of taken on the shape, if you will, of the taller you are, the longer you are, the more advantage you have with hitting really, really hard and spinning serves. And so to see just a kind of a normal local boy making it into the Sweet 16 of the national tournament, that's a testament to the ability of this guy, but also this guy's heart. And this is fun. And too bad tennis doesn't always get the same level of notoriety as some of the other sports, because this is a big deal anytime you compete at the national landscape.
Yeah, it really is. And again, any good positive momentum for the athletics department, man, that can translate sometimes. Pretty cool to see. And we'll be hoping maybe he's still going by the time this podcast comes out tomorrow. That'll do it for us. Big thanks to Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USAF Federal Credit Union as well. Big thanks to Hunter and our guy Jonathan for keeping us on track as always. We'll be back next week to talk a bit more about kind of the off-season happenings. We'll know, I don't know if we'll know by next week, but I think at least within the next couple of weeks, we should probably know which games have been picked up by national television for the University of Hawaii. and which games will be on the usual Spectrum coverage here locally. That's something to look forward to. I'm kind of curious if maybe it's more than the 4 games picked up last season, right? If you go back to 2021, they had like 6 games, I think it was, on national television. So we'll see if there's maybe some interest with some of the marquee matchups for Hawaii coming up this year. Something to look forward to there. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you next week right back here on Hawai'i Football Now. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to Hawai'i Football Now with Jordan Helly and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.